Hi everyone and welcome to the Poke Plateau. Today we're going to discuss some recent collectible news that happened this week. On June 20th, CGC announced that CGC and CSG were going to merge and form CGC Cards. For those of you that are uninitiated, CGC is a grading card company, a third-party independent grading card company that grades trading cards. Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic the Gathering, stuff like that. CSG is a grading card company that grades sports cards, football, baseball, basketball, the like. They've decided to merge and form this one singular card grading company, and the move has kind of ruffled feathers in different corners of collector communities. This news is coming a little bit late, I know that, because I wanted the news to kind of permeate and marinate, because there were a lot of questions when it was initially announced. The backlash, if that's what I'm going to call it, was very quick and filled with emotion, and I don't want to really just go off that, because I had an original opinion about it, and I did share it on Twitter, but there were questions that needed to be answered, and that's why I'm making this video, because you probably have a lot of questions. Maybe they were answered by CGC, maybe they weren't, and I just wanted to kind of put it out there what these changes mean for the communities that are involved with grading cards. So let's take a look and see what we're looking at. So first and foremost, CGC made this announcement on Tuesday, June 20th, and kind of just put it out there. They released this kind of B-clip footage of people grading cards and just said that there are changes happening. So the reason being that they're merging, that CGC and CSG are merging, is because they essentially do the same thing. They both grade cards. Why they were two different companies before, I don't know. But they were doing essentially the same thing for different reasons. Every other grading card company that I am aware of, Beckett, PSA, etc., those other companies, already do that as one company. They already grade cards as a single entity. So from that standpoint, it makes sense to just merge the two and do the grading as one single company. They do the same thing. Makes sense. Totally understand that. Makes sense. But the changes aren't just that. It's not just as simple as, let's take our two companies that do the same thing and combine them to save space, resources. It's not as simple as that. The change had more to it than just combining resources. With this B-roll footage video, they linked to a news article, well, their own article, to their website to go over said changes. So we're going to review it today. So like I said, CGC will instantly become one of the biggest players in the card market, which it already is. It's PSA, CGC, and Beckett. Like, those are the top three guys. That's the Cerberus of grading card companies. In order, sure, that's an opinion, but they're one of the big three. They're already one of the largest graders on the market. So they stated that the changes would be effective in July, so you have about a month before any of these changes are going to actually go into effect, but let's go over those changes right now. So first off, the very first thing, that the labels, their labels are going to change, drastically change. I don't know who was in charge of the redesign, but they're still bad. CGC isn't really well known for their label design. None of them. Beckett's probably the highest quality label of those big three because they have the black and gold labels. But CGC went from like a blue gradient to just black and white, and the reception was not good. They look like crap. They're not good. bar none, they're not good. And it's... They go on about how CGC leverages the strength of the renowned certified grading company, which is their overall brand, or a certified guarantee company, which I think they spelled guarantee wrong, which established in 2000 has become the undisputed leader in pop culture collectibles. CGC primarily was known for their comics. That's how they were founded. They graded comic books, which still probably the top tier comic book grading company in the world. So they are, like I said, they are one of the, if not the largest, one of the largest grading companies in the world. Because as they go on, which, you know, the CCG companies have graded more than 75 million collectibles since 1987, also including the world's largest grading services for coins, paper money, and stamps. They do that too. See, huge grading company. I'm sorry, I keep hitting the mic. They do comic books, games, you know, they do everything essentially. So it's why it's funny that this merger is still happening. So the big thing is that they're completely reorienting their grading scale. Now, most grading card companies have the 1 to 10 scale. That's the scale. It's PSA, TGA, CGC, Beckett, ASG. All of these places have like a 1 to 10 scale, and it's all, you know, it all varies for different reasons. But CGC was primarily, or is primarily, known that their scale was the highest regarded scale when it came to grading. Like when you got a CGC card, you knew like this is legit. This card deserves that grade. The other thing is that they primarily needed a membership to grade with CGC. You needed to pay for like a monthly membership to be able to grade with them in the first place. I don't know how much, you know, that was. I think it was like $10 a month, but now it's $25 a year, which you get. It says membership get additional privileges, but now you don't need to pay for an account to grade with CGC. That's number one. You don't need to grade. You don't need an account to grade with CGC, which you used to. I guess that's an okay. That makes sense. That's a good change, because maybe that's the hurdle, is that nobody wanted to lock in, you know, and be like, hey, I got to pay for a membership, and then on top of that, pay for the grading of the cards. So they were double dipping. That's just how it is. It says that they're going to simplify the submission process. Sports card. In the meantime, there'll be a submission for all TCGs, but CGC will waive handling fee. For card submitters, they're no longer required to pay the fee twice, which, duh, like I just said, they were double dipping. But, you know, because of this grading scale change, the other thing is that I gotta go down here because this is where the change is. With PSA, because PSA is the largest grading card company. They just are. Everyone wants a PSA 10, blah, 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 because of marketing purposes and whatever. It became increasingly easier in the last 3 years to get a PSA 10 of any card, because PSA's grading standards slipped to the worst. They're the worst graders. They are, when it comes to the quality of the grade. Out of all of the companies that I listed, in my opinion, PSA is the worst in terms of their grading standards, because they don't really have any. I've seen cards come back as a 6 that look like a 10. I've seen cards that are 10 that look like a 10 and come back a 2. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Their standards are so low in terms of everything, it doesn't make any sense. But I digress. Because of this, and because of the changes, CGC is changing their grading scale. So their grading scale right now, like I said, is 1 to 10, but they wanted to basically retroactively up the amount of CGC 10s they had on the market. And not just the market, as a whole. Say, hey, we give out more 10s. They did this by saying every single 9.5 we have ever graded is going to automatically bump up to a 10. So that's right here. CGC cards will use will use an industry standard 10-point grading scale topped by a gem mint 10, and for the best of the best, a pristine 10, which is understandable. They used to give out these things called perfect 10s. When you got a perfect 10, essentially that meant there was no flaws with the card, nothing wrong with it at all. It was immaculate, done, couldn't get any better. That was the way that they did that. That's no longer the case. Perfect 10s are completely gone. They're not doing perfect 10s anymore. It's either pristine 10 or gem mint 10, which 9.5s used to be gem mint, which is why I'm going to continue. Cards previously graded gem mint 9.5 are exactly equivalent to gem mint 10 under the updated scale and will soon be reflected in the CGC cards certification verification, population report, and registry resources under the gem mint 10 grade without any action needed taken by collectors and dealers. Meaning, if you have a 9.5 CGC card at home, or you bought one, it's a 10. Instantly a 10. In their database, wherever they store their information, it's a 10 to them. But your slab will still say 9.5. That is, unless you resubmit to them for $5 more. Why? I don't know. That doesn't make any sense. So, as I mentioned, they used to give out perfect 10s. Perfect 10s were the upper echelon. They were perfect cards. There's nothing wrong with them. It seems that they felt that their cards, like that perfect 10, nobody wanted it because it wasn't a PSA 10, or for whatever reason, they decided we're not going to give out perfect 10s now. They're going to be called pristine 10s, which doesn't really differentiate between gem mint 10 and pristine that much. Just doesn't. Now, the second part of this new grading scale, besides getting rid of perfect 10s, is that they're completely getting rid of subgrades altogether. They're getting rid of one of their services altogether. Now, I bring this up because, yes, it's a service that they're no longer going to be offering. I've seen so many CGC graded cards with subgrades, baseball, basketball, football, Pokemon cards, Magic Gathering. I barely ever seen a CGC card without subgrades. I think I have one. Nope, I have one with subgrades. My point remains. They stated in recent months, fewer than 5% of submissions included a request for subgrades. Now, the reason for that, I wonder what's happened in the last several months. Let's go. Let's go see. So, the reason being is that this past July 2022, I know this is a forum, I understand that, but this is factual. July 2022, so less than 12 months ago, CGC decided to up the price of subgrades from $10 to $15. And that's not including the cost it is to pay for the grading of the card. Completely separate cost. Now, you have to pay for currently, this is how it is currently. You have to pay for the membership. You have to pay for the cost of grading the card. And then you have to pack on another $15 to get subgrades. That doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. Why would you? And then they decide like, hey, no one's buying these subgrades. That's why I'm getting frustrated. Only less than 5% of people are submitting to get subgrades. Maybe it's because You increased the cost to $15. Maybe that's why. You're triple dipping at this point. With a membership, the card grading, and the subgrade. I wonder why no one wants to grade with you. The only time I've seen people grade with CGC is when somebody does a group submission, and that group submitter, that middleman, basically covers the entire cost of submitting. That's it. That's the only time I've ever seen somebody grade with CGC. They've never done like, oh, I'm gonna send like a single card to CGC to see what it gets. Like, that's not a thing. That's because they're triple dipping. They're trying to just bleed money dry out of collectors, and so they're just getting rid of it. They're getting rid of subgrades altogether, even though I know Pokemon collectors do that all of the time, and it is a very primary reason why a lot of sports cards collectors submit to Beckett as well. Beckett does subgrades, and I know for a fact that sports card collectibles love subgrades because they know exactly why it got the grade that it got. So that's one big issue with these changes. Again, changing the labels, and they go sleek, upgraded labels coupled with the industry's best holder. Now, CGC does have like a thicker UV protected slab. It's I have one right here. You know, they're a very thicker slab. This is probably the only one. This is the only CGC card I own with no subgrade. But anyway, it's a thicker slab than, you know, PSA or TGA, or, you know, it's thicker. It's a lot thicker, so it's more protective. That's at least what they say. But it feels ununiform. I don't know what to make of it. I don't know. They can call it whatever you want. Industry's best holder. Fine, you can call it whatever you want. Those labels suck. But remember how I said they're getting rid of perfect 10s, and now they're gonna be gem, mint, and pristine. So that's their upper echelon. Those are their, you know, top tier cards. They announced along with it that pristine 10s. So that's basically perfect 10s are being replaced by pristine 10s, and Gem Mint 9.5s are being replaced by Gem Mint 10s. That's essentially the change with their grading scale. These are their pristine 10 labels. It's essentially the same thing as these labels, as the regular labels, but we added more black and a gradient gold. I think it looks even worse. Like it really does. Just don't know why. Just awful looking. So those are the primary changes that are going to be happening come July. So between now and I think July 21st, 23rd, I think it's 21st, you could submit cards to CGC and still get their primary service that you get now, subgrades, possibility of a perfect 10, etc. Those are still happening. So it feels like they're trying to get people to submit between those times to get the old labels, but they're also expecting more people to submit with all of these new changes because A, you don't have to pay for, you know, your membership anymore. They're getting rid of subgrades though, so they're not really triple dipping anymore. But they're hoping that more people submit their cards to get more cards in their catalog that they've graded. Now, with all those changes, it sounds almost identical, if not the exact same, as changes that Beckett announced a couple months ago. Now, I've talked about Beckett several times in this video. PSA, those are the top 3 tier grading card companies. PSA, Beckett, and CGC. Those are the big 3. Like I said, the Cerberus of the grading card community, or grading community. Beckett announced a few months ago in April, or is it last year? No, April, yeah. It just feels like forever ago that they announced these. So they had plans to radically do the exact same thing that CGC announced. change their grading scale, change their submission process. In April, oh my god, there's so many ads on this website. I went to it because it's a news website. The Collectible Guru, I follow him on Twitter. This was announced in April. I remember seeing it and I was like, what the why is this a thing? So they had announced that their grading scale was changing. That the pristine black label, which that was going to stay the same, that needs 10s in 4 categories, centering, edges, corners, surfaces, needed 10s in all those categories. Then you get a black label. The gold label would change to 3 out of 4, got a 9.5, gem mint. So they were essentially adding more 10s to their catalog. So it's black label, and then there's 3 different types of 10s. CGC decided to do 2, but Beckett was like, we're gonna do 3. The last one doesn't make sense to me. The gem mint 10, where it's you get a 10 and then 9.5s all around, that doesn't make any sense to me at all. Then mint plus, so they announced essentially the same thing only a couple months ago in April, that they were changing their grading scale, where you could possibly get 4 different 10s. You had not the option, but you had the ability to possibly get a 10 gem mint, gold label, or black label. You had that ability. It got dragged. Same with CGC. CGC got dragged, which is why I wanted to marinate. CGC did a live on the Wednesday after the announcement, to kind of dispel any information, stuff like that, and it was dragged. People kept asking questions, no answers, got dragged. Beckett just completely turned tail. In 2 days after they announced all of these changes, they completely turned tail and decided, we're not going to do that anymore. Because the feedback that we got from the community was awful. So it's been 3 days since CGC has announced these changes, and as far as this recording, haven't seen any decision to step back and kind of say no, because they got dragged pretty freaking hard. And the other thing about this is that CGC, I'm gonna keep going back to this article, I know. They continuously stated that this was based off of rigorous research done by a third-party corporation to kind of compete with PSA. That's what both of these announcements from Beckett and CGC were really to do. They wanted to better compete with PSA. PSA has gotten the most submissions, gotten the most turnaround. So they go on that the merger of CGC and CSG is a culmination of exhausting market research, including customer and non-customer surveys, and then focus groups. Now, the reason I bring this up is because I don't know if that market research or surveys or focus groups, I don't know what customers those are from. Because CGC and CSG, although they do the same exact thing, have different customers. Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh!, those TCG customers are not the same kinds of collectors as sports card collectors are. They just aren't. There's a little bit of overlap, but they're vastly different. I know my brother collects sports cards. That's something that we do have in common. I collect Pokemon cards, collect sports cards. There is a bit of overlap. There are shows that we go to that have sports cards collectors, and they're selling sports collectibles. There's Pokemon cards. There's a very vague overlap, but the needs of those customers do not overlap much. But I just want to know what clientele was being research. What market? It says exhaustive market research, including customer, non-customer surveys, dozens of focus groups, and thoughtful analysis of the card grading business. Did you not see the Beckett backlash? It's only a few months ago. What research did you guys do? I understand the combining of the companies. It makes sense. I think it's the lack of transparency to the research that they're talking about. You know, there's nothing really given and nothing really provided. Besides that 5% thing in the last couple of months for the subgrades, there's not really any like solid numbers given for this research that they've done. When this first got announced, I saw Pokemon Deals. He was one of the many people that talked about it. As he said, they jacked up the price and said people didn't want to buy it enough. Like that's what happened. And then, you know, just absolutely taking L's. Like it doesn't make any sense. Beckett announced the exact same thing. And there's my comment. But like it's very odd to say that you have all this market research, then go on a live. See, not a fan of the gold. Go on a live, have people ask about it, and then not answer those questions at all. So let's go over the things I do like. I do like the fact that CGC and CSG are merging because it makes sense. They do the same thing. Bar none, they do. I like that they're getting rid of the option that you have to have a membership to grade with them in the first place. It doesn't make any sense that you have to have a membership to grade with any company, because you're then going to have to pay them to grade your card already. That's why I said earlier that they were triple dipping: membership, grading card, and then subgrades. So they were triple dipping from their customers. So those things I do like. The things I hate, the things I dislike about this decision. The labels, they suck. They're terrible looking. CGC has never had really good labels to begin with, but it's not an upgrade. The black and white is not an upgrade at all. Neither is the pristine and Gem Mint 10 labels. You got rid of a gradient and then you're putting another gradient on. It doesn't make much sense, which is it's like it doesn't make sense. I don't like it. And the last part is the grading scale. The grading scale changes don't make sense, other than trying to get more 10s in your catalog and say, hey, we give out more 10s than PSA and Beckett, by retroactively going back and saying every single 9.5 we have ever graded is going to be an automatic 10. Just adding to, hey, we have more 10s. I have no idea how many 9.5 CGC has in the market or in their database, but I'm assuming that it's going to greatly increase the number of 10s that they have overall. And the last thing I have to comment on is that I think that these decisions, the decisions from Beckett and CGC, while they are very obviously meant for competition with PSA, because they are both getting their butts kicked in terms of overall grading, it weakens grading as a whole. The act of grading weakens it because of these decisions. Beckett, thank goodness, decided to trend backwards, but CGC very much seems to be striving forward and going through with these changes. The reason I say that is because just being able to add more 10s to your database may help you in the short term by saying, hey, we give out a lot of 10s, like you can submit with us, make sure like that card is going to come back at 10. In the long term, it lessens the value of those cards because the system has changed. The 10s don't mean as much anymore because you're giving out more of them. You guys have to remember that PSA controls their grading market with their partnership with Golden and all of these auction houses, eBay and stuff like that. They control that market. PSA makes sure that their cards sell for a high premium that then collectors use as the standard. CGC and Beckett don't do that. They're very independent. They're very, very independent when it comes to the sales of their products. PSA isn't. They're very involved. That's why their cards sell for the most. But nobody really realizes that. Well, they do realize it, but they don't care. And controlling the market is something that has put PSA on top, and it's just bad when the other companies, to compete, have to devalue their own product to get ahead and be competitive. So as I said, short term, probably good, more submissions. Long term is going to just devalue all grading card companies overall. It's just going to devalue everything because the 10s don't matter anymore. If you're handing out more 10s, that just means you're handing out more 10s. But PSA can survive because, like I said, they control that market. The others don't. If they controlled the market, they'd probably be able to do the changes, but they just don't. They're very independent. If you like this video, please hit that subscribe button to ensure that anytime we post a video or go live, you are there to see it. Guys, have a great day. Take care.